What's up, guys? Welcome to the Metal Roofing channel. Welcome to Q&A Mondays. I'm Thad Barnette. If you're an architect, this video is for you because we're talking about the new LEED V5 and how that applies to standing seam metal roofing and Sheffield Metals. And today I've got Lori from the Sheffield Architectural Department here. Thank you for being here, Lori.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. So we're talking about three main things today in regards to the new LEED V5. The first thing is the three key impact areas that LEED V5 focuses on. The second thing is how Sheffield Metals and Sheffield's metal products can help support the architectural community in LEED V5 projects. And then lastly, we'll dive into the exact credit categories that Sheffield and LEED V5 kind of interact with. So tell me about, LEED V5, what are the key impact areas that it's really focusing on?
Sure. As according to the LEED V5 website and USGBC, they are stating the three key impact areas are decarbonization, quality of life, and ecological conservation and restoration.
So in regards to those three key impact areas, how does Sheffield Metals help support the architectural community in LEED V5 projects?
Well, an example, and a couple of these all go back to the decarbonization, which is, as we're trying to do, that's addressing the greenhouse gas emissions. That's like a big overview right there. But as I read through the new LEED V5 rating system, I reflected on how are we going to support specifically Sheffield. So one is what they are referencing as transportation emissions. And this I talk about in our sustainability course, that if the design is now focused on designing with metal and the client has embraced on-site production right there, and we can show them how they will reduce the project's carbon footprint by embracing on-site production of a metal panel roof or wall system. So that's wonderful because you are reducing, and it's the emissions during transportation. So it's a perfect fit. The second one that they kind of expand on a little bit is they're calling it providing structures or spaces that are environmentally and people friendly. It's like in earlier versions, they talked about environmentally friendly, but now they're going back to the quality of life impact statement. So again, now we're designing with metal for the cladding systems. That in and of itself adds to the longevity of the structure, at least upwards of 60 years. And then secondly is that they specify the cool roof. This is the paint system of today that uses the PVDF, which everyone knows it, but I'll say it again, polyvinylidene fluoride coating of the paint. And that on commercial buildings will make a heat gain reduction of at least 10 to 30% of the cooling energy use. So in those two aspects that Sheffield can support the architects in that, we've got the building now that's environmentally friendly and people friendly. And then lastly is they refer to the built environment existing harmoniously with nature. So when I read that, the first thing I thought of again was the service life assessment, which by the way is only referencing the material called Galvalume, which is aluminum and zinc coating on steel. Most of us have transferred over to supplying just that. Now, you have the longevity of the roof, the inhabitants of the structure are comfortable inside, and now that building itself with that cladding just ages gracefully in nature right there. So I love setting that stage because it's a great fit for this new rating system.
So now let's go even deeper and identify the actual credit categories that Sheffield and LEED V5 kind of interact with here. So Lori, what's up first when we're looking at credit categories?
Okay, the first category we're going to cover is called Integrative Process Planning and Assessments, and they identify it as IP. They have a quote here on decarbonization that I'd like to share with you. Quote, "The built environment contributes significantly to global greenhouse gas emissions. The built environment accounts for 21% of total greenhouse gas emissions, and the built environment accounts for 31% of global carbon emissions This is in 2019 for operational carbon emissions only. So now just to hit on those three types of emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions, that's a broader category. It encompasses all the greenhouse gases. Carbon emissions, that's a narrower category, and it's focused on carbon-based gases, specifically CO2. Operational carbon emissions are a subset of greenhouse gas emissions, specifically related to the building operation. So the two distinct ways that we will support the architects that have inspiration and aspirations of going for that LEED certificate is, again, and I mentioned this before, embracing on-site metal panel fabrication. In that manner, the project's carbon footprint is going to be reduced by way of the delivery of the transportation of the final product. There will be 4 times less CO2 emitted during that transportation versus choosing a preformed metal panel and the CO2 that's emitted during the transportation of that product to the job site. And then the second way, distinct way that we will support the architects on the projects for LEED is, again, the reduction in the building's heat gain by specifying with that paint system with the PVDF formulation. This has been tested and documented, reducing the cooling energy use by 10 to 30%, which is really impressive. So 2 very distinct ways that we can assist with that.
Yeah, and going back to what you said about portable roll forming, it's the marketplace is completely different now than it was 20 years ago. And to get very practical with it, there are so many more manufacturers that support portable roll forming. Portable roll forming machines have come a long way and produce a really fine panel, a really high quality panel. So kind of the fears of the past are no longer, and portable roll forming is much more accessible for so many projects.
You know, just to reflect, it's such an exciting material segment to be involved in because we have so many improvements over it, just like you said, over these past 20 years. Extreme, and we're not done yet. We're not done.
So what are the credits, does Sheffield and LEED V5 kind of cross over at?
Sure. Next it's in the material and resources credit category, and this is titled MR. And specifically, it's talking about reduced embodied carbon. The embodied carbon is going to be the emissions generated during extraction, manufacturing, transportation. There's that transportation. As embodied carbon comes from the building materials, this accounts for at least 11% of annual global emissions. The LEED V5 rating system now is targeting strategies for high impact actions like supply chain decarbonization, low embodied carbon material selection, and a building reuse. So all of this is going to help those project teams see the carbon reductions immediately. So in this way, we're going to support them in providing, it's an industry-wide environmental product declaration. You can either get a product specific or you can do industry-wide. So we're all part of the Metal Construction Association. There are over 100 members of this group. All of us can say we are involved in metal and construction, vendor, distributor, designers of the products. So we stand in that way. This environmental product declaration is going to be of the material type. So we're talking specifically about the steel or aluminum. There are 2 paths in the EPD and with the embodied carbon emissions challenge, the category. So you can either do a project EPD or you can do the materials type. So we're able to support it that way. And then the other is in the material and resources, a second one, low emitting materials. This will be where we give the architects the supporting documentation that talks about low VOCs, which is the volatile organic compound. That's the VOC. And in relation to our materials and accessories and systems, that's going to be the paintings, the coatings, the adhesives, the sealants, and the roof underlayments. Classically, that will be what we will give them. And these are letters right from our suppliers and our vendors quantifying the low VOC content.
Okay. So with this credit, it's just simply documentation, whereas some other credits you might have to have project-specific changes that you might have to make, like portable roll forming.
Correct. Then there's one more item in this materials and resources category, and it's called quantify and assess embodied carbon. So I'm going to read the intent because the LEED V5 reference guide was just recently posted and available to all of us. So within each category, they also list out the intent of the category. So the intent of this one, which again is quantify and assess embodied carbon. To quantify the embodied carbon impacts of the structure, enclosure, and hardscape of a project and assess the top sources of embodied carbon. So that's what they're looking for. Again, then, Sheffield will provide that industry-wide environmental product declaration. And it is going to call out in that report, in that declaration, we have the GWP, which is global warming potential, and the embodied carbon emissions. And we have them for both steel and aluminum. So we can satisfy and assist with that supporting documentation.
So we've discussed 2 credit categories so far. I think we have one more to talk about. What else do we need to discuss?
This last one, I have to tell you, I was really blown away when I read it because this is kind of like opening up their arms and saying, bring us your projects. So there used to be a credit category called innovation. And that was great. But what happens over these last couple of years was it's evolved in this new LEED version 5 rating system. They now have this category called project priorities. And it's, as they put it, its goal is to have greater flexibility for projects to address the unique context and priorities, including typology, culture, location, areas of innovation, and individual performance objectives. This is where, I feel that Sheffield has always been able to be flexible and accommodating. And this will be like, bring us your project as wild and as pushing these boundaries of LEED. Bring us in and we'll work with it. So very, very exciting that way. LEED claims that they have thousands of green building professionals gathered and tasked to create this new version. And they now commit that every 5 years will be the next version. So it's got a structure, but yet it's got an energy that's allowing for more creativity, specifically in this project priorities category. And as it says here, to encourage projects to think creatively, to test and accelerate new sustainable building practices and strategies. I mean, it's awesome. And I could go on, but I think it's a lovely way to end this with such a positive, open-minded, because why not? This is our chance to do this, and we can certainly support them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an exciting look into the future for sure. And as you mentioned, how can the Sheffield Architectural Department help the design community, with LEED V5 or LEED projects? What is the support that you offer there?
In that is exactly that. Typically, the firm will say, we're going for LEED. We're going to go for a certification. We on the Sheffield side are not concerned with whatever level, platinum, silver, bronze. It does not matter. They will guide us. They have the sheet, the checklist that they go off of. And so we just stand ready when they're, and it's mostly, as you said, we are supplying them the documentation. If there's any further education anybody needs, we certainly have a plethora of education and content and blogs and articles and videos. And we have a couple under our belt. I think ironically, right now, they are in the state of Montana, that's kudos to Montana for that.
Awesome. Well, Lori, what a fantastic discussion on LEED and how Sheffield can help in this way. I really appreciate your time.
And I appreciate your time, and we all look forward to hearing from the architects as they move through this very next exciting new rating system of LEED. It's a lot of work, but the intention is just as where we all should be right now.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Thad.
Thank you. If you have any questions, please comment down below or contact us at sheffieldmetals.com for help with your next project. Subscribe here to the Metal Roofing channel. As always, I'm Thad Barnette. We'll catch you next time.